Like many kids growing up in the early 2000s, my first video game console was a PlayStation 2, and my go-to series was Sly Cooper. I played the second and third games endlessly as a kid, but much like fans of Persona, Fallout, Metal Gear, and Grand Theft Auto, I never played or owned the first game in the series. I only first tried it later into my life, but not that much later I was still a kid, so much like those other previously mentioned fans, I didn't like the first game due to how different it was from its sequels. However, I am now a fully mature adult who enjoys playing games made for children, and I want to give Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus a fair shake to see if it still stands on its own as a good video game, while trying my best not to compare it to its sequels. Well, that and I also want to do videos on Sly 2 and 3 at some point, but I figured I should probably cover Sly 1 first. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, or Sly 1 as I'll be calling it from now on since that title is a mouthful, was developed by Sucker Punch Productions. Nowadays they're known for Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei, but they got their start not with Sly Cooper, but with Rocket, Robot on Wheels for the Nintendo 64 in 1999. After having issues with finding a publisher for Rocket, Sucker Punch decided to look for a publisher first before starting their next game, which led them to Sony, who agreed to publish their next game exclusively for the PlayStation 2. This next game would be Sly 1, which released in 2002 to great critical reception and decently high sales, even selling enough to get a Greatest Hits re-release, which I personally think has better box art than the original. In 2010, Sly 1, along with its two sequels, would be remastered and packaged together on the PS3 in the Sly Collection, which is the game I played for this video's footage. This game's port of Sly 1 is relatively faithful. Generally, anything I say about the PS2 version applies to this version and vice versa. But don't you worry, I have plenty to say about the differences between this and the PS2 version when the time comes. For now though, it's time to jump into Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. The game starts off pretty strong. Instead of just a basic 2D image title screen, we get this cool cutscene of Sly running across the Paris rooftops before stopping on the roof of Interpol headquarters. This is just like Call of Duty Black Ops 1. Bear with me here. This title screen is actually the first level of the game, and by starting a new save file, we're dropped immediately into the tutorial. This is just something that I think is really cool when games do it. The second and third games do this as well, so I'm glad to see that it got its start here. It's not something that's particularly technically impressive, I doubt it was even for 2002 standards, but it's a really nice stylistic choice that, I don't know, I just find really cool. I'm sure there's a handful of other games out there that have their title screens set up this way as well, but Sly 1 is the oldest example of it that I'm aware of. Okay, but that's enough of me praising the title screen. It's time to actually get into the game.
Sly! Come in! Sly! Do you read me?
Yeah, I read you. Loud and very loud.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Trying to break into police headquarters does that.
Get over it, Bentley. You're safe in the van. I'm the thief here. I've got to steal that file from Inspector Carmelita Fox.
Aside from blowing out our eardrums, this cutscene also introduces us to our main cast. Sly, voiced by Kevin Miller, Bentley, voiced by Matt Olson, and Murray, voiced by Chris Murphy. I'll discuss vocal performances later, but I do want to touch on one thing right now. One of my favorite fun facts about the Sly series is that while Matt Olson and Chris Murphy put on voices for Bentley and Murray, Kevin Miller just kinda sounds like that.
Well, Sly Cooper is a thief, and he's a different type of thief. He's cool, he's tough, but he's got to be lovable at the same time. And he's also a really good-looking guy, and he has a sexy voice. Just, argh.
This opening area lets us run around and experiment with the controls as the opening credits play. Having opening credits is an interesting stylistic choice here. Opening credits are kind of a lost art these days. Watch any old movie and most of them will have an opening credits sequence before the actual movie starts. While it's outdated now, this opening credits sequence gives the game a more cinematic feel, which I quite like. And while a cinematic feel is nice, this is a game. So how about that gameplay? Well, Sly is pretty standard when it comes to platformer characters. We'll unlock more abilities as we progress through the game, but for now all Sly can do is run, double jump, and swing his cane to attack. Overall, Sly controls pretty well. He runs at a good speed, his jumps have the right amount of floatiness, the double jump allows for easy repositioning, and his cane swings have a good range, so you never have to get too close to an enemy to attack. Well, there is one other thing Sly can do.
Hey, Bentley, I think I'm seeing things. Must be vertigo or something. Can you see those crazy blue lights?
Really? I've read about this. Master raccoon thieves are able to sense thieving opportunities, which manifest themselves as unexplainable blue auras.
Sly has the ability to perform sneaky thief moves whenever he's near these blue sparkles. For now, we can only creep along ledges, but this will be expanded more as we progress through the game. These thief moves are little more than glorified auto-aim for your jumps, but they really do make you feel like a sneaky and agile thief. After sidling across that ledge, we come across a staple of the stealth genre, lasers. Maneuvering around laser security has got to be one of the coolest things about performing a heist in any piece of media. Lasers in Sly 1 will start out as yellow, but walking through them will cause them to turn red and set off an alarm. Lasers, along with every other security system-esque obstacle, such as spotlights, can be deactivated by destroying the alarm that they're linked to. I find Sly 1's security system obstacles to be particularly better than they are in the sequels. In Sly 2 and 3, you step into a laser and it's like, oh no, you got hit, oh well. But in Sly 1, it's like, oh shoot, alarms are going off, the lasers are red now, oh gosh, I gotta get to the end of this section. It's just some really solid game design that increases tension without increasing challenge. The only difference is the lasers are red now, so just don't hit them again. Sly 1 will introduce more and more variations of these obstacles as the game progresses, but before we can experience any of those obstacles, we still gotta complete the tutorial. After making our way through Interpol headquarters, we enter the office of Inspector Carmelita Fox. From the look of it, she seems to be very familiar with the Cooper gang's antics, with headlines and pictures of Sly posted around her office. We can ransack the office a bit for some coins, but the main thing we came here for is in the comically large safe. We crack open the safe to retrieve Sly's own case file? I'm gonna nitpick a little bit here and ask why this isn't a case file for the villains of the game. I feel like it wouldn't be that big of a stretch to assume Sly would already know whatever's in the case file since, you know, it's his file. Whatever, this is just a MacGuffin for us to get Sly's backstory at the end of the prologue anyway. So with the case file in hand, we can escape out the window and make our way to the van.
Criminal! You foolish raccoon. I've caught you red-handed.
Ah, Carmelita. I haven't seen you since I gave you the slip in Bombay.
This is Inspector Carmelita Montoya Fox. She'll make a few appearances throughout the game to show off her stormtrooper level aim. This makes for a fun set piece, but as long as you're not standing still, it's basically impossible to get hit by her, and I might just be the worst gamer of all time. Carmelita serves two main roles in the story beyond skill-checking overconfident players such as myself. The first being to act as a foil to Sly. She helps sell the Robin Hood fantasy of being a good guy that acts outside the law. Secondly, she serves as Sly's love interest, although in this game the interest is pretty one-sided on Sly's part. Wow, Carmelita sure does have a nice voice in this game. I sure do hope that they don't change her voice actress in every game in the series. After not dying in the tutorial, we hop in the van and drive off.
You can't escape me, raccoon!
Once again, my gang and I had given Inspector Carmelita Fox the slip. I was surprised to see how well she took it. Finally, the secret police file I'd been searching for all these years. With this, I could avenge my family and regain possession of our most valued treasure.
These comic book style cutscenes are one of the Sly series' most recognizable features. I would say that they're good rewards for progressing through the game in and of themselves, just because they're so nice to look at. This cutscene sets up the main story. Sly was next in line to become a master thief by learning from his family's book, the Thievius Raccoonus. But before he got a chance to read it, a group called the Fiendish Five broke into his home, killed his father, and stole the pages out of the book. Sly then ended up in an orphanage, which is where he met Bentley, the brains of the operation, and Murray, whom Sly describes as
part-time driver and full-time burden.
Kind of rude to describe your childhood friend that way, but okay. I think Sly puts it best when it comes to the gang's goal in this game.
Together we pledged to track down the Fiendish Five, avenge my father, and steal back the Thievius Raccoonus. I knew I was about to face the toughest test of my life. On this mission, I would either become a master thief like my ancestors before me, or fail and allow my family name to bite the dust.
We are then dropped into the van, a level select screen that allows us to talk to Bentley to rewatch any cutscenes we've already seen, and also to look at Murray to get a sneak peek of where the next world takes place. There isn't a lot to do here from a fresh save file though, so for now we can jump into the first world, Tide of Terror.
The road trip gave me the time I needed to study up on Sir Raleigh the Frog.
The first member of the Fiendish Five is Raleigh. You know, he never had much as a kid, just loving parents, stability, and a mansion. And a thriving baked goods enterprise for him to inherit.
Useless crap like that.
So naturally, he turned to piracy. Beyond being evil, Raleigh is also British. So naturally, we must put a stop to him. Tide of Terror begins with an extension of the tutorial, titled A Stealthy Approach. This level introduces us to our first enemies, which can be defeated with a single cane swing. In general, the enemies in Sly 1 aren't that much of a threat. The ones with projectiles can absolutely catch you off guard if you aren't careful, but as long as you make sure to dodge their first attack, you almost always will be able to hit them before they can get another attack out. There is one big exception to this rule, but since they don't appear in this level, I'll talk about them later. At the end of the level is a treasure key. These are the game's main collectible, and we'll get one at the end of every level. This first key unlocks a path that leads us to a staple of the Sly series, the hub world. The later games in this series would expand on the hub worlds by adding collectibles in them and having missions that take place within them, but we don't have any of that here. The hub worlds are barely a step above Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 on the PS1 in terms of having things to do within them. However, on the upside, much like Crash 2 and 3, Sly 1's hub worlds are quick and easy to traverse, so while being rather barren, they aren't intrusive at all. Aside from selecting levels, the hub worlds also offer lucky charms and extra lives. Sly dies in one hit in this game, but Lucky Charms allow Sly to take an extra hit from any source of damage. You can also get Lucky Charms from collecting 100 coins, and a gold Lucky Charm from another 100 coins to let you take 2 hits before dying. I never really gave these much thought during my playthrough since I'm an elite gamer that never gets hit, but they can come in very handy in a few sections of the game. This hub world also introduces us to a staple of the series, the Flashlight Guard. Unlike the first enemies we faced, these flashlight guards actually encourage stealthy gameplay. They can only see what their flashlights illuminate, so you have to wait for them to turn their backs in order to get close enough to take them out. If you mess up and get caught by them, it's pretty much guaranteed damage or a death because all flashlight guards are equipped with patented raccoon-seeking bullets. The game uses these flashlight guards in regular levels a few times for some genuinely tense stealth challenges. Once we're done exploring the hub world, we're free to select any of the available levels. Most of the levels in Tide of Terror are relatively easy, as they should be for the first world in the game. Despite being easy, these first levels all manage to make a strong impression and are quite fun. Levels in Sly 1 can be divided into two basic categories. The first is normal platforming levels, which, if you'd believe it, mainly involve platforming, although some platforming levels do incorporate unique gimmicks of their own. The second category is minigames, which... I'll come back to these ones. Now that we know what kind of levels are in the game, this is the part where I go through every level and explain how the story and gameplay are expanded as the game progresses. Except, Sly 1 doesn't really do this. While gameplay does get expanded here and there throughout the levels in the game, Sly 1's story is almost exclusively relegated to the opening cutscenes and boss fights of each world. In the sequels, the levels directly contribute to the larger plans of the Cooper Gang. Meanwhile, in Sly 1, every level outside of the prologue and boss fights exist for the sole purpose of allowing you to obtain treasure keys. I just brought them up for the hub worlds, but this way of delivering story is almost exactly like Crash 2 and 3. Get a little story, then some gameplay, then some story, then some gameplay. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with structuring a game this way, but it does make it hard to say something unique about every level in the game. Some of these levels just don't do enough unique things for me to write about them for more than a couple sentences. As such, I'll only be talking about the most notable levels from each world. Me skipping a level doesn't mean the level is bad, just that I don't have enough to talk about it to dedicate a whole paragraph to it. Just keep in mind that every world in this game has at least 1 or 2 levels that are perfectly fine, that I just don't have a lot to say about. Now then, on with the levels that I do have things to say about. My absolute favorite level from Tide of Terror is A Cunning Disguise, where we use a barrel to hide from guards like Solid Snake. This level puts major focus on the barrel by blocking the path to progress through the level with these pressure-sensitive dart turrets that the barrel will shield us from. This is probably the most stealth-focused level in the game, though that's not really saying much. Stealth as a gameplay mechanic very much takes a back seat in Sly 1, and is usually only relegated to singular sections of individual levels. While these sections are fun, I would have enjoyed more of them. The other platforming level I want to talk about here is the Gunboat Graveyard, which has us platforming around a ship graveyard inside of Raleigh's own ship. It's cool to see the effectiveness of Raleigh as a pirate. He's taken out a ton of ships, a submarine, and even a plane. In contrast with A Cunning Disguise, this level does not put any sort of spin on the core gameplay. All that this level offers is running, jumping, climbing, and defeating enemies, which is perfectly fine because all of those actions feel great to perform. Sucker Punch really did a good job of making it fun to control Sly in this game. While there's no spin on the platforming here, this level does have one unique feature. It's here that we get our main introduction to Raleigh. Sort of. Every world has one of these PA announcements from the world's boss that more or less just says, "Oh, I'm the bad guy. I hear someone sneaking around stealing my treasure keys. My lackeys need to work harder, blah blah blah." They don't have a lot of substance to them, but it's at least nice to be reminded of the presence of each world's boss, since none of the Fiendish Five get much screen time in this game.
If any of you let him get his hands on the key, I'll personally flog the lot of you for an entire fortnight!
While going through levels, we'll also come across another staple of the Sly series, the clue bottles. They were first introduced in the opening level of Tide of Terror, but I felt like talking about them here instead. Each regular platforming level has between 20 and 40 clue bottles to find throughout them. If you've played the later games in the series, then upwards of 40 clue bottles per level might seem like a lot. which it is, but the game tends to bunch them together in groups of 2 or 3 or into small challenges like this one, so they're more spread out than you'd initially think. It's actually pretty hard to find all of the clue bottles in every level, with most levels having 1 or 2 groups of really well hidden ones. Once you've collected every clue bottle in a level, you can unlock that level's safe to find either some information on the world's boss or a page of the Thievius Raccoonus. The information allows you to see all bottles and breakable objects in a level, as well as the names and some fun facts about each of the world's guards. The bottle locations are a really useful upgrade for finding any groups of bottles that may have eluded you on a first playthrough of a level. The pages of the Thievius Raccoonus unlock power-ups for Sly that range from useful abilities like a speedy roll and a long-range dive attack, to more gimmicky abilities like a cinematic slow motion mode and a super speed mode, to borderline useless abilities like the hat mine. I wouldn't say you're missing out by not going for all of the clue bottles in every level, as most of these abilities are just kind of fun gimmicks at best, but the roll power-up is actually really useful for the time trials. Toward the end of Tide of Terror is where Sly 1 starts showing its age, as we are unfortunately bestowed with a minigame level. You know what nobody outside of a mental asylum has ever said in the 68-year history of video games? Man, this platforming game sure is great. I just wish there was less platforming in it. Thankfully, Sucker Punch was ready for the possibility of someone saying this and decided to pull a Crash 3 and implemented a few minigame levels to shake up the gameplay between every couple of normal platforming levels. Unfortunately, Sucker Punch did not realize that I bought this stealth action platformer for stealth action platforming. Anyway, this level is a twin stick shooter. We move with the left stick and shoot with the right stick. Just shoot all of the treasure chests and don't let the crabs take any of them. This is one of the more fun minigame levels and has just the right amount of difficulty where it's frantic but not stressful. For whatever reason, Sucker Punch is just surprisingly good at making twin-stick shooter minigames. If every minigame level in Sly 1 was as good as this one, I wouldn't have any problems. Unfortunately, the minigames only get worse and more numerous as the game goes on. But before we can get to more minigames, we need to take care of the first member of the Fiendish Five, Raleigh.
How delightful! We have a guest. The only thing is, I hate unexpected guests!
All of the villains in Sly 1 really managed to leave a great impression with their limited screen time. They're all voiced really well and have cartoonishly distinct personalities. They're so much fun that it's a crime they're barely present. All we get from each villain is a single PA announcement in one of the levels and the dialogue right before their fight. I like what the game is giving me with these bosses. The problem is that it's just not enough.
So, without further ado, let me make amends by what? Bloating to gargantuan size and squashing you like the insignificant bug that you are!
Bring it on.
As for the actual fight, Raleigh is pretty simplistic, as it should be for a first boss. The fight consists of jumping around platforms and dodging him while he tries to use his
gargantuan size
to crush you. Every time you hit him, he switches up his tactics a little bit. The first phase of the fight lets us dodge however we want. The second phase forces us to stay on just one platform and dodge in a much smaller area. The third phase then does the opposite and forces us to keep jumping between platforms as Raleigh's
gargantuan size
will not cause them to drop below the water. The fourth and final phase then repeats the second phase, but Raleigh adds a spinning attack with his tongue. One neat detail of the bosses is that their health icon looks more beat up as you deal damage to them. And speaking of dealing damage...
Blast it all! You've beaten me! Well, gloat all you want, Sly Cooper. You're no match for Mugshot, my villainous cohort in Utah. You'll see. Mesa City is so well guarded, a snake couldn't slither in without setting off alarms.
That is one of the funniest death sounds I've ever heard in a game. Can we just hear it one more time, please? Thank you.
Finding a way off Raleigh's boat got a little tricky with the untimely arrival of Inspector Fox, who, failing to find me, busted Raleigh and his crew.
You'd be forgiven if you'd forgotten about Carmelita since the tutorial. The game tries to give you a sense of her constantly being on your tail, both figuratively and, as we'll soon see, literally, but I find that you just don't get that feeling due to the long stretches of time where she just disappears from the plot. Remember, the last time we saw her was at the end of the tutorial. Her lack of existence will be rectified slightly as the game goes on, but it would have been nice if she was more present in the game overall. With Raleigh defeated and one section of the Thievius Raccoonus recovered, that ends Tide of Terror. Overall, a really solid introduction to what Sly 1 has to offer. If you are left wanting more, the game will absolutely deliver, on both the good and the bad.
It had been a while since I'd been back in the US. Next up, the notorious Mugshot. Ruthless muscle of the Fiendish Five. What he lacked in brains, he definitely made up for in brawn.
My strongest memory of my first time playing Sly 1 is that opening cutscene. In the third game, spoilers for a game that's old enough to drink, by the way. In the third game, Mugshot shows up and mentions that he has history with the Cooper Gang and Carmelita. I had always wondered what adventures Sly went on in Mesa City that led to Mugshot having such an intense hatred for the Cooper Gang, so getting to play through it was a really cool experience for me as a kid. Also, since I associate Mugshot with Sly 3 rather than the first game, his design here always looks weird to me. What do you mean this guy isn't always wearing full pilot's gear wherever he goes? Sunset Snake Eyes is where I would say that Sly 1 really hits its stride, starting immediately with the opening level, a rocky start. This level is gorgeous. Sucker Punch really leaned into the sunset part of Sunset Snake Eyes here. The world skybox looks really nice. This is up to personal preference for sure, but I do think that this world has the best visuals in the game. All of the levels that take place outdoors just let you look out for miles. Granted, there isn't much out there beyond rock, sand, and maybe a river, but I still think the view is pretty nice. Not nearly as nice as Jak and Daxter, which released a year earlier than Sly 1 and lets you see way more of the game's map from any given vantage point, but Naughty Dog was at the top of their game at this time, and Sucker Punch was still trying to find their footing. And again, I personally really like the aesthetics here, so I'm willing to give the lack of detail a pass. But we shouldn't be looking off in the distance anyway. The main part of the game is the level right in front of us. Much like Tide of Terror's opening level, this one introduces us to new moves, enemies, and obstacles that we will encounter in the world. At the start, we're given a tutorial for Sly's new move, the Ninja Spire Jump.
Yeah, do me a favor and read me the instructions again.
To landeth safely upon diminutive points, leapeth lively and presseth the triggering device with the round geometrical object emblazoned upon it.
So jump and hit the circle button to land on narrow spots.
That's a rough translation.
Sly can use it by jumping and hitting the circle button to automatically land on pointed objects. Now, what's that? You're saying it sounds like just another way of jumping between platforms, except it's easier because there's no risk of falling? Okay, I hear what you're saying, but did you stop and consider that it makes you look and feel really cool and sneaky? Yeah, checkmate. The enemies and obstacles introduced in this world are nothing too special though, mainly just new flavors of what was already introduced in Tide of Terror. The biggest addition here are these laser floors that will change positions after a few seconds. These are a decent little challenge that make for good platforming sections when they appear. The most memorable obstacle from this world to me though, is these walls that look like they're impassable until you get FNAF jump scared by these dogs. These guys genuinely startled me the first time I played this game. Side tangent here, I've already brought up Crash 2 and 3 a few times, but Sly 1 really does take a lot of cues from those games. I already mentioned the hub worlds, the story structure, the prevalence of minigames, but now I want to point out the level design. Sly 1 is a very linear game. All of the regular platforming levels in Sly 1 are very similar to Crash Bandicoot levels. Sure, Sly 1 may have more open space, more verticality, and more winding paths than the Crash games, but all of the levels still keep you more or less on rails from start to finish. I don't bring this up as a point of criticism for Sly 1 though. Instead, I bring it up to point out how influential the Crash series, specifically the second and third games, were to Sucker Punch while developing the game. Sly 1 can really be looked at as a Crash Bandicoot 4 before we got a Crash Bandicoot 4, with a thiefy coat of paint on top. And that's high praise. The Crash games are great and still mostly hold up even today. And there's nowhere better in Sly 1 to talk about level design than here in Sunset Snake Eyes, which by far has the best selection of platforming levels in the game. First up is Boneyard Casino, which might be my favorite level in the entire game. I love the casino theming, and these roulette wheels are a great platforming challenge. The level expertly introduces these wheels, expands on the gimmick by adding lasers to them, and then finally tests us at the end with this giant roulette wheel that we have to precisely platform on. Alternatively, if you've unlocked the world power-up, you could just skip this whole final challenge. This level's just really fun to play, and I'd say the linearity of it makes it even better by having a steady increase in challenge throughout. We can even hit the slots to get coins, both literally and figuratively. No, I don't have a gambling problem, it's only a problem when I stop. The next level, straight to the top, sees us scaling the roof of the casino to drop a wrecking ball onto a skylight window to reach the treasure key. How and why there's a crane with a wrecking ball on the roof of Mugshot's casino, I don't know. Nor do I know why there are multiple wrecked cars dangling off the side of the casino by magnets. But what I do know is that this level has a banger song, probably my favorite in the whole game. I don't really have a lot to say about this level beyond it just being really fun. I would have skipped talking about it, but I wanted to show that you can do this on the neon arrow signs. Then there's Back Alley Heist, which, aside from having the same great background music as Straight to the Top, has the fun gimmick of being presented in a 2D perspective. I like how this level handles the clue bottles. Since the bottles can't be hidden as well as in a 3D level, a lot of them are instead grouped into fun little challenges, though there are a couple bottles off the beaten path as well. Overall, the level is just really solid and fun to traverse. The last level I want to talk about is 2 to Tango, which sees the return of Carmelita.
Well, 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 look who just walked into my crosshairs. Sly Cooper.
About time you showed up, Miss Fox. Was getting worried about you. Thought you took a wrong turn somewhere back in Paris.
Wow, even Sly noticed that Carmelita barely shows up in this game. This level expands on the small chase section from the tutorial perfectly. It starts out with her just shooting at us while we run along the rooftops, but at the halfway point of the level, her shots actually start destroying the platforms we're standing on, forcing us to not just dance around her shots, but always continue moving forward through the level. This is a great spot to talk about how Sly handles difficulty in regards to platforming. Since Sly automatically snaps to poles, hooks, and ropes by jumping and pressing the circle button, jumping between platforms is never really an issue. Instead, the game tends to challenge your timing with these abilities. Generally, this is done by having a pole or a spire jump point alternate between being safe and dealing damage, although some levels do have more complex challenges like these Carmelita chases. Sly 1 does a great job of continuing to add more and more complex obstacles as the game progresses, making for a fun and steady difficulty increase all the way until the final level of the game. However, I don't want to mislead anyone here. The game is still overall pretty easy. At least, that's coming from the perspective of someone who's played the game multiple times and is over twice the age of the game's target demographic. A child could definitely find this game challenging at various points, especially with, the mini-games.
Murray, what's going on down there?
Well, I drove to this hot dog stand for a quick snack, and the next thing you know, I'm getting challenged to a race by these gangster dogs.
Is there a key in it for the winner?
Yeah, 3 times around the track for a key.
Wait a second, who the heck is that guy? This is our gameplay introduction to Murray. Yeah, I almost forgot he existed too. Murray's really weird in this game, almost as if his whole character was an afterthought. Before this mission, which is the second world in the game, mind you, he's only had like 4 or 5 sentences of dialogue at the start and very end of the tutorial. I'll talk more about Murray as a character later though. For now, let's talk about his gameplay. Our main description of Murray comes from Sly referring to him as
Part-time driver and full-time burden.
Here we experience the part-time driver half with this racing level, which is really terrible. The van handles like it's always on ice, and it's really slow too, so you absolutely have to collect every single boost power-up or else you're pretty much guaranteed to lose. The issue here is that the other racers can just accidentally pick them up, screwing you over. If this happens more than once in a race, you might as well restart. But these races are only hard when you get screwed over. If everything goes your way, they're a walk in the park. I even managed to get first place early into the second race level, yeah, there's a second race level by the way, and went a whole lap around the track without having to use a single nitro boost, and I never got passed by the enemy racers. It's almost like the enemy racers have some sort of anti-rubber banding, where they get worse or slower when you pass them instead of better or faster. The difficulty is all over the place for these race levels. I never feel like I've earned my win, instead I just feel like I managed to win the coin flip for whether or not the game would let me win. It's just really not fun. Once we experience Murray's part-time driver half, we get to see his full-time burden half. In this level, we have to use a turret to protect Murray as he makes a run for a treasure key. The problem here is that Murray dies in one hit, and there aren't any checkpoints, so you better not miss or you're gonna have to do the whole thing over again. This level even has a fake out with these barrels of poison gas that will kill Murray if we shoot them. One nice thing is that if Sly has a lucky charm when going into the level, Murray will also have one, making the level much more forgiving overall. Oh yeah, there's also friendly fire, so we can shoot Murray if we're not careful. Or we can shoot Murray if we just feel like it. Yeah, that's for making me do that stupid racing level, idiot. You know, Sucker Punch was actually really ahead of the game here. Boring turret sections wouldn't be in fashion until the 7th console generation. I wish I could say this was the absolute low point of the minigames, but unfortunately that won't come until the next world. For now though, it's time to meet Mugshot.
What? My boys have been yapping about some big mysterious dude running around cracking skulls and this is it? You're the monkey wrench in my operation? Some scrawny rat with a stick? Hey, wait a second. I seen that stick before.
Maybe when my father knocked your block off with it.
Your father? Wow! You're a Cooper? You know, that Thievius Raccoonus had a lot of nice pictures, but way too many big words.
So you don't mind just handing it over?
Why? What, are you kidding? You break into my place, steal my stuff, trash the joint. I feel transgressed and violated. Let's rock!
You know, for a guy who complained about the Thievius Raccoonus having way too many big words, Mugshot was really casual about throwing around words like transgressed and violated. Or actually, maybe he picked those up from his reading. Mugshot's boss fight is actually pretty tough. For the first 2 phases, he's constantly chasing us down, only taking brief pauses to shoot. This is actually pretty stressful because he can close distance really fast, and his bullets travel fast too. Mugshot's boss fight is pretty simple. All we have to do is run around the arena and hit these mirrors that reflect light into these crystals that then burns Mugshot? That's bit of a departure from just smacking Raleigh a couple times, but okay. So originally I had a part here about how Mugshot's boss fight was poorly designed because the game never tells you that you have to flip all of the mirrors. I had known the method to defeat Mugshot since before my first time ever playing Sly 1, and the game doesn't have any dialogue or text at the start to tell you how to defeat him, so I just figured the game never told you at all. However, I was actually wrong about this. I'd never tried to attack Mugshot before since I knew that's how the fight works, but during editing I found out that Sucker Punch actually did account for if you try to attack him.
Mugshot's too strong for your cane. You're gonna have to find some other way to stop him.
The main takeaway from this is that making assumptions is bad. And more importantly, that Mugshot has a well-designed boss fight. Having played Sly 1 multiple times, Mugshot is probably my favorite boss in the game. It's just really fun to dodge and weave around these crystals while trying to get all the mirrors in one loop of the arena. For his third and final phase, Mugshot is stationary, and we have to reflect all of the mirrors back at him on this chandelier. I swear this children's game has no regard for logic or reason. This is actually the easiest of all the phases because it lets us take our time instead of having to constantly run away. A small bit of added challenge is that Mugshot can now flip the mirrors back with his bullets, however this is mitigated by the fact that we don't have to rush at all and can just hit a mirror, wait for Mugshot to flip it, and then flip it right back after. And once we hit all of the mirrors, Mugshot is defeated.
This is impossible! A little pipsqueak like you, beating a big strong bruiser like me? It ain't right! You want all of that stupid picture book? You're gonna have to go down to Haiti and cross paths with Ms. Ruby. And then believe you me, you don't want to be you.
It really irks me the way that Mugshot just tells Sly where to go after defeating him. Same with Raleigh. I get that this is a kid's game and I probably wouldn't be nitpicking it as much if I wasn't already a fan of the series, but this is just a really clunky way of getting Sly and the gang from location to location. The writers could have easily fixed this by just having Bentley hack into each villain's database to get the next one's location, or just have the gang already know the location of the next villain from the police file in the prologue. Instead, Sucker Punch just had their villains be like, "Ah, you got me, okay, go here next." It's not like this is some grave writing sin that ruins the whole game or anything, although maybe it would be in a game that was attempting to take itself more seriously. It's just something that I personally take issue with. But that ends Sunset Snake Eyes. For my money, Sly 1's best world. Even with the 2 unfun minigame levels, the good outweighs the bad by a good amount. Alas, all good things must come to an end. And the end of Sunset Snake Eyes brings us to Vicious Voodoo.
The third member of the Fiendish Five was the infamous voodoo priestess, Ms. Ruby. Born into a family of mystics, other children found her scary. Teaching herself to summon the undead provided what few friends she had. A career in crime allowed an adult Ms. Ruby to punish the world for fearing her as a child.
Ah yes, the old, "you all treat me like a freak, so I'm gonna prove everyone right" gambit. Unintelligent, yet tragically realistic for a social outcast. I think that Ms. Ruby is a well-written character for what little writing she actually gets. Sadly, her paper-thin backstory is one of the few things I'm able to praise Vicious Voodoo for, because it's here where I would say Sly 1 truly hits a low point. A crazy rebound considering the previous high of Sunset Snake Eyes. Although the bad doesn't start immediately. This opening level introduces us to the rail walk and rail slide. Much like the Ninja Spire jump, these abilities are pretty much glorified auto-aim jumps, but they are pretty fun to pull off. Unfortunately, that's where the positives about this world end. Vicious Voodoo has the highest concentration of minigame levels in the game, and 3 specific levels from this world are infamous for how awful they are. The first I'll talk about, Piranha Lake, is the one that I'm the most okay with. We have to drive around on a boat with a flamethrower on it and light 25 torches before time runs out. However, you need to run over piranhas for fuel. Also, the piranhas always try to run away from you. Also, you can only carry 5 flamethrower shots at once. All of these factors combine with the time limit to make this level really suck. 2 minutes is a good amount of time for me, a seasoned veteran of video games rated E for everyone, but I could easily see this level giving a child a hard time. Next up is Down Home Cooking, where we have to help a ghost make a pot of gumbo by killing 50 chickens in just a minute and a half. Why can't the ghost do it himself? Well, he's scared of the bomb-toting roosters, of course. He doesn't want to die. The word of the day is contrivancy. This is definitely the most ridiculous setup for a minigame level in the whole game. I figure that the ridiculousness of the setup is supposed to be comedic. That or the writers just didn't care. But actually playing this level just makes me cry rather than laugh, which I'm assuming the writers would have rather had me do. The main issue here, like with Piranha Lake, is the time limit. We have to kill 50 chickens in just a minute and a half, which is really tough because, like with the piranhas in Piranha Lake, the chickens constantly run away from you. Even now, this minigame takes me a good 3 or 4 tries to complete, with most of my losses coming from running out of time with only 1 or 2 chickens left, which is extremely frustrating. Not to mention the bomb-toting roosters, which always force you to be on the move. Previously in Sunset Snake Eyes, I praised when the game forced me to always be moving. The difference between these two is that in 2 to Tango, the threat of Carmelita shooting you or the platform you're standing on was the only condition for failure. Here, on the other hand, we have 2 failed conditions, both the roosters catching us and not killing all the chickens in time. So we have to keep away from the roosters that are chasing us, but chase the chickens that are trying to keep away from us. These goals are completely opposed to each other, and it just makes for a really frustrating level. Some of this frustration can be mitigated by bringing a lucky charm into the level to tank a hit from the roosters, but being able to ignore part of a challenge doesn't make the challenge good or fun, it just makes the challenge actually doable. Down Home Cooking really just checks all of the wrong boxes here. Funnily enough though, Down Home Cooking and Piranha Lake have the same background music track and it's pretty good, so there's at least one thing that's good about these levels. Before I get to Vicious Voodoo's final bad level, I do at least want to highlight 2 standout great levels. The first being Lair of the Beast. This level makes use of the rail walk and rail slide that were unlocked from defeating Mugshot. And if you liked how frantic the Carmelita chase in Sunset Snake Eyes was, then this level has this
Let's go faster. Go, 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 go.
Help me! Help me!
Real talk, this snake chase is a solid substitute for the Carmelita chases from the prologue in 2 to Tango. The game even builds tension for the surprise by having you see the snake slithering through the water before it chases you. This is definitely Vicious Voodoo's best level. And while not as good as Lair of the Beast, Descent into Danger is another really good level. It does start off on a bad note though, with Bentley daring to speak the Lord's name in vain.
Oh my god, a green waterfall overflowing with bones and body parts!
Excuse you, sir. This is a Christian household, and I will not tolerate that kind of language. One more slip like that, and I'm hard pivoting this video into a review of the Bible game. This game is actually kind of good, though. The reason I like this level is that it has 2 fun set pieces. The first and smaller of the 2 is this section sneaking underneath these flashlight guards. Sly 1 is definitely at its best when it lets you feel like you're being really sneaky, especially since that feeling is much rarer here than in the sequels. The larger set piece comes at the end of the level. After making our way to the very end, we get to rail slide all the way back to the start for the treasure key. It's really satisfying to get to see all of the progress you made through a level, and to get to move through it all again so quickly. See? Vicious Voodoo isn't all bad. Alright, now let's get back to the bad part.
I could feel that Cooper vibe a-coming. Most distastefully bad juju.
Yeah, well, you give me the creeps too, lady. Cooking up an army of ghosts isn't a very neighborly pastime.
Oh, Sly. I see your mouth a-moving, but all I hear is blah, blah, blah. Well, if jaws need to flap, then let them flap. See you in the next world, Sly Cooper.
Ms. Ruby's fight is a little bit of a fake out. It starts out with this really short platforming section before getting into the real thing.
Come back here. You can't run away forever.
Quite true. Quite true.
Oh geez, she's talking again. I'll just explain the fight since we'd be here all day if I let the cutscene play out. Basically, the fight's a rhythm game. Ms. Ruby will send out attacks in time with the music, and all we have to do is press the right button in time with the music to dodge. In theory, this is a really cool fight, and as a fan of rhythm games, I really want to like it. But it has one major flaw that really holds it back. There aren't any checkpoints for this fight, which, while true for all of the game's bosses, is a real problem because this level has to be synced up to the music, which means it takes much longer than any other boss fight in the game, even the final boss. This means that dying is a major setback rather than a minor annoyance. The first phase is pretty much a cakewalk, which is why getting sent to the start after dying is so annoying. Maybe it's a skill issue, but this fight always gives me trouble, so replaying the same slow first phase 3 or 4 times gets really monotonous when I want to get into the more enjoyable second and third phases. Again, I really do like the idea of this boss fight, but the novelty wears off for it fast after just a couple deaths. Some checkpoints really would have made this level far more enjoyable. After each phase of the song, you hit Ms. Ruby. She can attack you, but you have to be the worst gamer of all time to get hit by one of these attacks. You know, if you think about it, being the worst gamer of all time is actually kind of an accomplishment. As I was saying, it's really easy to hit her before she's even able to get a single attack out. And after you hit her a third time, No, there's something I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, you. As I mentioned previously, this review is focused on the original 2002 release of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus for the PlayStation 2, but I'm using footage of the 2010 HD collection for the PlayStation 3 due to it having a 16:9 aspect ratio and HD graphics. This game is a really sloppy port that, among other things, is notorious for desynchronizing the music in Ms. Ruby's boss fight. It also desynchronizes Carmelita calling you a criminal in the tutorial mission, but that's way less important.
Criminal! Criminal!
Genuinely, how do you mess this up? Anyway, the secret tactic for Ms. Ruby's fight is that you don't need the music at all in either version. That's just a lie the government tells you to keep you from seeing the truth, man. You see, Sly will only perform a dodge when he's actually able to dodge one of the attacks. This means that you can just spam the corresponding button and not have to worry about the timing at all, making the fight much easier no matter if you're playing on the HD collection or the original PS2 release. This fact doesn't save the HD collection from being an insultingly low effort port, but it does make the boss fight at least playable on it. Aside from that major oversight with Ms. Ruby's boss fight, there are also many instances of the developers of the HD collection, Sanzaru Games, not taking the new 16:9 aspect ratio into account. Being an early PS2 game, Sly 1 was built with a 4:3 aspect ratio in mind, as most TVs back then were 4:3. While the HD Collection's version of Sly 1 doesn't have many issues regarding the aspect ratio, Sly 2 and 3 have some serious issues, with assets like dialogue boxes just not reaching the ends of the screen like they're supposed to. Lastly, I've never heard anyone talk about this before, but toward the end of my playthrough for footage of the game, I got this odd bug where the sound for Sly sneaking behind enemies always played while moving, even when there were no enemies around. I don't know what caused this, and I don't know if this has been documented anywhere else before. The bottom line is this HD collection is insultingly bad, especially when Sly's contemporaries, Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank, to my knowledge, both got perfectly fine HD trilogies on the PS3, along with practically every other PlayStation 2 series. I legitimately do not recommend the Sly collection for PlayStation 3. The only upside of playing the game this way is the aspect ratio making it look better for YouTube. If you really want to play the Sly Cooper series, either buy a regular PlayStation 2 copy or play them with a PlayStation Plus Premium subscription. Or maybe skip the PlayStation Plus Premium, jeez. If you want to see all of the ways that the Sly collection butchered these games, I recommend this video by Jason's Pendulum. Alright, side tangent over, let's get back to beating up an alligator.
You certainly.
Oh jeez, I ain't got all day. Speed this up.
You're likely to get poked back.
Yeah, well, if he's anything like the rest of you, I think I'll manage.
Wow, even the game itself wants Vicious Voodoo to be over. This cutscene barely hits the 30-second mark, while Mugshot and Raleigh's outro cutscenes both managed to clock in at around 45 seconds. Can't say I'm too upset about it though, I want to be done here too. Vicious Voodoo is Sly 1 at its worst, with an abundance of unfun minigames and a frustrating boss fight to cap it off. Even then, there's some fun to be had here and there, especially with Lair of the Beast, which is one of the best levels in the entire game. I just don't think that one good or even great level is enough to save Vicious Voodoo from easily being the worst world in the game. Thankfully though, the worst is now behind us, and with Ms. Ruby being gracious enough to tell us where to find the next member of the Fiendish Five, we can move on to Fire in the Sky.
The road trip gave me the time I needed to study up on the Panda King. Born penniless, he was fascinated by the fireworks rich noblemen set off every New Year's. He spent a decade learning the art. But when he tried to offer his fireworks to the noblemen, they couldn't see past his shabby clothes and chased him away.
It's really interesting how many of the game's villains are a mirror to Sly. Mugshot, Ms. Ruby, and the Panda King all suffered hardship in their youth, just like Sly. And, also just like Sly, they all decided to take revenge on the people that wronged them. Not Raleigh though, he's just evil for the love of the game, and I respect that. The game doesn't really do anything with this concept though. There is a conversation between Sly and the Panda King at the end of this world, but it has the Panda King say that he and Sly are the same because they're both thieves, which isn't really the same thing. I can't really be mad about this though. For Sucker Punch, this was just a kid's game, and the framework of guy gets bullied and then takes his anger out on the wrong people is a pretty effective template for a villain backstory. The series would do this concept of the villains mirroring Sly a lot better in the third game, after Sucker Punch decided to start taking the story more seriously. Here, the fact that the villains mirror Sly isn't really a good or a bad thing, it's more just kind of an interesting thing to notice. As for the actual world of Fire in the Sky, it has a pretty explosive start, pun intended, with the Panda King using fireworks to cause an avalanche to bury a village in snow, killing at least, like, 4 people.
Would you look at that? A fireworks show! Oh my gosh, that's awful! That poor village just got buried in freezing snow!
This is the second most evil act committed by any villain in the series, right behind Sanzaru Games for making Thieves in Time, and right after Sanzaru Games for making the Sly Collection. This quick little scene is really nice because it actually shows how much of a threat the Panda King is. This is the first member of the Fiendish Five that we see actively committing crimes. Sure, they all helped to kill Sly's dad and steal the Thievius Raccoonus, but Raleigh, Mugshot, and Ms. Ruby were all just kinda chilling when we first arrive on their turf. Actually seeing the Panda King bury a village in snow in real time gives a sense of urgency for stopping him. Like, we gotta stop this guy before he buries another village. After watching a bunch of people die, we can fully take in the level. Fire in the Sky is a nice breath of fresh air after Vicious Voodoo, both in gameplay and in visuals. This is definitely up to personal preference, but I find the snowy mountains of Fire in the Sky to be way more pleasant to look at than Vicious Voodoo's endless swamps. Here we're also introduced to Sly's final major upgrade for the game, straight up invisibility. From a lore standpoint, this is crazy overpowered, but from a gameplay standpoint, it's kind of just okay, I guess. You turn invisible by pressing the circle button, which you'll likely find out accidentally since this first level doesn't require the ability at all. To start out, you're not actually able to move while invisible, but if you've been diligent with collecting all of the clue bottles in every level, you can unlock the ability to move. Very slowly. This ability is far more of a gimmick than the Spire Jump or Rail Walk and is not nearly as useful. You also can't go invisible if you've been detected by a guard, so the ability is just extremely situational overall. The only level in the game that actually requires us to use the invisibility power is the Unseen Foe. Even then, it only gets used a handful of times in the level since, by default, you can only stand still while invisible. Despite the limited mobility, there are a couple fun challenges that make use of the power in this level. It's a real shame that invisibility is so underutilized, because it ends up feeling like you didn't even get a reward for finishing Vicious Voodoo, which further makes me dislike that world. At least this level is able to squeeze some fun out of an ability this limiting. So overall, I'd say the invisibility power-up is pretty decent, though far more forgettable than the Spire Jump or Rail Walk. My personal favorite level from Fire in the Sky is the Flaming Temple of Flame, which has solid platforming and this cool set piece where you sneak under and over these monkeys that are training with nunchucks. They're also weirdly loud. I think this is just a thing with the HD collection, but I'm not exactly sure. Whatever the case, I killed them all to make them shut up. The level ends with a cool shot overlooking the whole temple. Just like with Descent into Danger from Vicious Voodoo, it's really nice getting to see how far you've come upon reaching the end of a level. Next up is Rapid Fire Assault, which is a twin-stick shooter minigame. This one controls the same as the one from Tide of Terror, but we can actually move through the level in this one instead of being confined to a small area. Like I mentioned back then, the Sly series manages to make pretty fun twin-stick shooter sections, and this level is no different. This is a perfectly fine, fun level. There was also one of these levels in Vicious Voodoo, but I skipped over it because, like here, I just don't have a lot to say. In fact, I would have completely skipped over talking about this one if it weren't for the fact that this level specifically will be somewhat relevant to the story at the end of this world. So I guess just keep this level in mind as I talk about the rest of this world. Unfortunately, while Fire in the Sky has plenty of good levels, it also has some stinkers. It's here we see the return of both the Murray Racing level and the Turret level. Both are just as fun as they were in Sunset Snake Eyes, so I don't have much to say about them here. The main thing I want to talk about is how, in the racing level, all of the enemy racers share the same car model, while all of the enemy racers from the level in Sunset Snake Eyes had unique car models. I liked the unique cars from the first level, so it was a bit of a letdown that the cars here are all the same. Other than that, these levels are really no different from their Sunset Snake Eyes counterparts. Fire in the Sky also shares another type of level with Sunset Snake Eyes, that being the Carmelita chase.
Freeze, Raccoon!
How can I freeze when my heart warms at the very sight of you?
Shut up, Ringtail. I don't know what you're doing here in China, but I'm sure it can't be good for whoever owns this place.
You must only have eyes for me if you're too blind to see what's going on around here.
I like how the game subtly hints at Carmelita's possible attraction to Sly here. This isn't any Fallout New Vegas, but a little bit of foreshadowing goes a long way towards making the payoff at the end of the game feel earned. Spoilers, I guess. Also, at the end of this cutscene, if you don't jump on the hook to start the level, Carmelita will just stand there shaking her fist at you, and I think that's really funny. Just like 2 to Tango, having Carmelita shooting at us makes the level very frantic and gives the level a good sense of flow. I really think Sly 1 would have benefited greatly from having Carmelita in it more. I like her interactions with Sly, and these levels are my favorite levels in the game. Instead of talking about the level, since it's quite similar to 2 to Tango, I want to talk about the game's animation. You've probably noticed by now, but the animation quality here is a bit lackluster, to say the least. Not the stylized comic book cutscenes, no, those are incredible. The actual in-engine cutscenes, however, are a different story. Characters in this game move very robotically, and you can clearly tell where each model's joints for their individual body parts are. As someone who grew up with Sly 2 and 3 as my main platforming games that I played, which do not particularly improve on their in-engine cutscenes, I never really saw a problem with the way characters moved in them. However, if you compare Sly to Ratchet & Clank or Jak and Daxter, both of which came out around the same time, Sly is not winning any awards for its animations. I really want to be charitable here because I love this series, but the animation quality here is undeniably lesser than many other PS2 games that released in 2002. However, Sucker Punch only had one N64 game under their belt before Sly 1, while studios like Naughty Dog and Insomniac had 4 PlayStation 1 games worth of experience going into their respective PlayStation 2 games. When you look at it that way, this is likely the best that Sucker Punch could do with the experience they had and the time they were given. Whether or not that excuses the animation quality, however, is up to you. Coming back to the level, at the end here we straight up bury Carmelita in an avalanche. So I guess Sly isn't all that different from the Panda King.
Watch your back, Cooper. When you least expect it, I'll be there.
What a weirdly ominous thing for her to say. But I guess we'll have to wait for Carmelita to dig herself out of 20 feet of snow before we can find out what she meant by that. In the meantime, we need to face the Panda King.
I see you carry Kane of notorious Cooper Thief clan. Have you come here for revenge? To steal back the Thievius Raccoonus?
That was my plan at first, but now I'm more interested in putting an end to your avalanche extortion racket.
Why should you care if I bury a few worthless village in snow? You are a thief, just like me.
No, that's only half right. I am a thief from a long line of master thieves, while you're just a frustrated firework artist turned homicidal pyromaniac.
In my opinion, the Panda King is probably the least interesting member of the Fiendish Five. The rest of them have such big personalities, while the Panda King is far more reserved. Ironically, that does make him stand out against the rest of the Fiendish Five, it's just that he doesn't stand out in a way I particularly care for. It's during this fight that I want to briefly touch on Fire in the Sky's placement in the game. Originally, it was intended to be the first world, but was moved to the fourth sometime later in development. It's hard to say exactly why this change was made. Maybe Sucker Punch just had more ideas for complex platforming challenges and so they moved it later, or maybe they wanted it to be right before the final world since China is the closest country to Russia out of the ones we visit in the game. But my best guess is that it has to do with the Panda King's boss fight. Compared to the previous members of the Fiendish Five, the Panda King isn't made out of paper and actually takes a good amount of hits to go down. Plus, he has the largest variety of attacks out of any boss in the game, adding one more between each of his phases. However, he telegraphs all of his Flame Fu attacks by literally calling them out.
Booming chop! Fiery wheel! Palms of thunder! Fiery wheel!
As long as you don't get greedy with your own attacks, they're pretty easy to dodge. Also, complete side note, this game featured a panda that does Kung Fu a whole 6 years before DreamWorks released Kung Fu Panda. If I had a nickel for every time that one of my favorite pieces of media featured a panda that does martial arts in China, I'd have 2 nickels.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
The Panda King clearly isn't the Dragon Warrior, however, as he's quickly defeated by getting smacked with a stick a handful of times.
Your skill with that cane is unparalleled.
Sly, I did a cross-analysis of the metal used in that high-tech blasting vehicle, and it turns out it can only be found in one place. The Raccoonus volcano in Russia. That's got to be where we'll find the 5th member of the Fiendish Five. So get what you came for and let's get out of here!
Okay, 2 things with this cutscene. First, that high-tech blasting vehicle that Bentley mentioned is the thingy from Rapid Fire Assault. See, I told you it'd be important for later. Bentley figuring out where the next member of the Fiendish Five is, rather than just having the Panda King tell Sly, is exactly what I wanted from the other members. This is a far more natural way of progressing the story than just another instance of, oh, you got me, but the next guy in the next country will surely get you. The second thing I want to talk about has to do with a very small detail at the end of this cutscene. I'm gonna let that part play out and you see if you can notice it.
A frustrated Inspector Fox, having missed me coming down the mountain, threw the Panda King in jail, thus putting an end to his avalanche protection services and ensuring the safety of mountain villages throughout China.
So, did you see it? Yeah, when I first saw it, I couldn't believe they were able to get this past the ESRB. No, not Carmelita's, interesting choice in wardrobe, the other thing. Oh, what? You don't see it? That! Right there! My mom won't let me say that word, but that word. You might not see the big deal here, but Sly 1 is rated E for everyone, and only has a content descriptor for mild violence, so this was definitely just something that the ESRB missed when rating the game. Unfortunately, the ESRB doesn't seem to have a public list of what words directly equal what ratings, but I would assume this would have at least caused Sly 1 to get an E10+ rating had it been caught. Yeah, this isn't exactly creepypasta lost media material here, but I find it interesting that a swear word was able to make it into a children's game. With those side tangents and the Panda King out of the way, we're down to the final world and the final member of the Fiendish Five, Clockwork.
We were on our way to the Krakkarov volcano in Russia. While looking over what little information I had on the final member of the Fiendish Five, I began to notice something. In the 4 parts of the Thievius Raccoonus recovered so far, several of the pictures depict a shadowy owl-like figure, which looks very similar to the police images of the mysterious Clockwork. Is this a strange coincidence, or is there something I'm missing?
Oh man, I'm really excited to talk about Clockwork, but before that, we actually have to reach him, and it starts with the turret section. Cold Heart of Hate is structured a little differently to the other worlds in the game. There's no hub world here, instead we have a back-to-back gauntlet of levels. I would have liked to see a hub world here, even if Sly 1's hubs are a little more basic compared to the sequels. This industrialized volcano fortress seems so cool, but we don't get a chance to actually explore it on foot. However, to compensate for the lack of hub worlds, Sly 1 actually starts developing the story in each of the levels. Every level in this world actively contributes to reaching Clockwork, which I really like. In this first level, Sly uses the turret that the gang built using the schematics from the Thievius Raccoonus pages to defend the van from Clockwork's security measures. This turret section is a little different than the previous ones, the main difference being that Murray decided to slam back a few cold ones and refuses to take his foot off the gas pedal for the whole level, which means that yes, this is an auto-scroller. Hooray. Auto-scrollers have to be one of the hardest types of levels to get right in game design. Too fast and the level becomes overwhelming, too slow and the level becomes boring. This auto-scroller definitely falls into the latter category. There are at least a good variety of different obstacles to shoot at in the level, but holding down the fire button and moving the reticle around the screen is only fun for a certain amount of time, and that certain amount of time is about half the amount of time it takes to get through this level. There also aren't any checkpoints here, so just like with Ms. Ruby's boss fight, dying feels like a massive setback. Next up is the final Murray driving section of the game, but this one isn't a race. Instead, we need to use the battering ram on the front of the van to destroy these computers so that Bentley can use their data to open up the entrance to Clockwork's base. However, the aftermath of my attempts to breed for a shiny Slugma have come back to haunt me, and they're trying to get to the computers first. There are only 119 computers that can be picked up, so it's a race to get to 60 before the Slugmas do. Out of all the levels to feature Murray, this one is definitely the most fun. Maybe I'm crazy, but the van feels better to control here than in the racing levels. There's also a great sense of urgency here, as it's inevitable that the Slugmas will at least get 30 to 40 computers before you hit 60. Also, if you're wondering why Sly isn't helping out with the turret from the previous level, well, that's because the tunnel leading into the cave didn't have enough clearance for the turret, and Murray just decided to keep driving anyway. Despite this, I'd still say that this level is one of the most fun minigame levels in the whole game. It's engaging and frantic without being overly difficult or frustrating. And, just like with the previous turret level, the ending of this one leads directly into the next level, which I think is really cool.
Careful, Sly! Those tiles are booby-trapped! You better get out of there!
Hold on. That's Carmelita. She looks trapped.
Serves that cop right. She's been dogging us from the start.
It's just a misunderstanding. We've got to free her.
Are you crazy, Sly? Clockwork probably stuck her there to trap you.
But if I don't do anything, Carmelita's doomed.
Don't worry, Carmelita. I'll save you. Just cut to the next clip. Alright, let's try that again. I didn't hit the circle button in time. This level is where the gauntlet starts getting good. For some reason, Carmelita's here and is being used as bait for the most obvious trap of all time. I guess this is what she meant when she said she'd be there when we least expect it. Despite this obviously being a trap, Sly's about as desperate for companionship as I am and decides to fall for the trap and goes to rescue her. This begins a small platforming section to get to Carmelita. It's not anything too crazy or difficult, but it does see the return of the barrel. The last time we saw this was all the way back in Tide of Terror. Weird to have it back for just this small section, but I do like the barrel gimmick, so I'm happy to see it return even for just a brief moment. Alas, my happiness is cut short, as the most obvious trap of all time is, in fact, a trap.
Sly Cooper! I should have known you were behind this.
You got me wrong, Miss Fox. I'm here to rescue you.
You sentimental fool. Empathy has always been the downfall of the Cooper clan.
I knew this was a trap!
This leads into the gameplay debut of Bentley, in the first version of his signature hacking minigames. This is a top-down twin-stick shooter where we have to collect yellow data cubes. These cubes are surrounded by shields that we need to shoot to break open. Running into these broken pieces of shield will damage us, as shown by what might be the most basic HUD of all time. We can fully destroy the pieces by shooting them more, but we can't just spam shots, as shooting the data cubes pushes them away. On top of that, we get introduced to these enemies later in the level that shoot out these red bullets that instantly kill you. I'm not big on the fact that these bullets are instant kills, but other than that, this is a decently fun and challenging minigame level.
I'm the best! No code can stand before me!
Sly, I was wrong about you. Break me out of this force field by smashing its base, and I'll make it up to you somehow.
In my playthrough for footage, I decided to goof around a little in this room before freeing Carmelita to see if anything would happen, and to my surprise, she has an extra line of dialogue.
Sly, I know you must hate me now, and I don't blame you. You've got to break me out of here before the gas comes back on.
I waited around for a bit longer to see if the gas would come back on, but nothing happened, so I just decided to free her.
I don't get it, Cooper. I've hunted you for years, tried to throw you behind bars, but when you get a chance to leave me in a cage, you set me free. Why?
Carmelita, we may be on opposite sides of the law, but you're not my enemy. Now, the homicidal robotic owl that built this death ray and nearly gassed us to death, that guy's on my list.
I see your point. All right. Until Clockwork and his evil schemes are destroyed, I suggest we work together.
Together at last.
So Sly gets his cane stolen. Luckily, Carmelita agrees to put aside her professional differences with Sly and help him reach his cane in order to defeat the larger threat. I really like this exchange because it gives Carmelita more depth as a character, something that this game has been sorely lacking up to this point.
Hold on. This truce is only temporary. Once we beat Clockwork, I'm coming after you.
Really?
Well, maybe I'll give you a 10-second head start.
This turret section is almost the exact same as the ones where you help Murray, but with one big difference. You can actually affect the pace Sly moves at. Sort of. The end of the level has a bunch of these weird yellow tube thingies that we need to break in order for Sly to reach his cane. We can actually shoot these ahead of time and make it so that Sly can reach his cane faster. It seems like such a small difference, but having these tubes as an obstacle at the end of the level lets you affect both the pacing of the level and lets you do something between shooting enemies that actually benefits you. Between this and the fact that I don't have to look at Murray, this is actually a really solid turret section.
Nice job, Raccoon.
Now that Sly's got his cane back with the help of Carmelita, we get into the hardest platforming challenge in the game, Sinking Peril. A frantic climb up Clockwork's death ray as it sinks into the lava of the volcano. It's an easy detail to overlook, but those yellow tubes we just destroyed as Carmelita in the turret section were actually the magnetronic support field for the death ray. The death ray sinks really fast, so it's actually pretty difficult to make it all the way to the top in time. This level's paced amazingly by putting plenty of obstacles in your way that force you to wait, always keeping you just barely above the lava. Also, I really want to know why Carmelita thought it would be a good idea to leave her jetpack right at the top of the death ray in the middle of a pool of lava, or how she even got down from here after leaving it there. She mentions that she managed to stash the jetpack, so it's not like Clockwork's minions put it here. I know I'm critiquing cartoon logic that's just clearly a setup for an admittedly awesome platforming section, but they could have just had her say that her jetpack fell onto the death ray after one of Clockwork's minions grabbed her out of the sky or something. In the end, it's really not that big of a deal though. The bigger deal here is the lack of checkpoints. I'll be more forgiving here than with the minigame levels though, for two reasons. The first being that, unlike the minigames, this level's actually a lot of fun to play. And the second is that this is the final platforming challenge of the game, so it can get away with being the most difficult and punishing level of them all. At the end of the day though, Sly 1 isn't the hardest game ever, so with some perseverance we can make it to the final fight against Clockwork.
Okay, that jetpack is easy to fly. Use the left analog stick to aim and steer, and press the square button to fire its rockets.
This brings us to the beginning of the Sly series tradition of having pretty lame final boss fights. Clockwork's fight begins with a new gameplay style, being the jetpack. This might be a cold take, but any boss fight that opens with a tutorial for a completely new gameplay style is bad game design. Well, this isn't exactly new. The controls here are the exact same as the turret section from the first level in this world, but now moving the crosshair also moves Sly along with it, which is really dumb. As soon as Bentley finishes giving us the tutorial, we finally get to see him, Clockwork.
Sly! Behind you!
Sly Cooper, you have escaped my gas chamber and destroyed my death ray. Remarkable. You Coopers always find a way to beat me.
Always? So that was you in the background of all those old pictures in the Thievius Raccoonus. How old are you?
Perfection has no age.
What? You're immortal?
Revenge is the prime ingredient in the fountain of youth. I've kept myself alive for hundreds of years with a steady diet of jealousy and hate, awaiting a day when I would finally eclipse your family's thieving reputation.
Sly! My missiles don't hurt him but seem to create holes in his armor. Shoot into the gaps I create!
I love Clockwork from a narrative and a character design perspective. He's large, imposing, and has a really threatening voice. Even being in the background, far away from Sly, Clockwork still takes up a large portion of the screen. I also love his lore. He literally has generational beef with the Cooper family so strong that he decided to ship of Theseus himself with robot parts so that he could live to hate them forever. Unfortunately, my love of Clockwork as a character doesn't extend to his boss fight. The first two phases of the fight are pretty simple. Just dodge a volley of Clockwork's attacks and then unload missiles into him once Carmelita opens up a weak point. This can be a bit tricky to do at first, since dodging Clockwork's attacks also moves the crosshair, so we sometimes don't get a full amount of time to attack Clockwork's weak spots. This first phase is about as simple as Raleigh's boss fight, if not simpler since Raleigh's arena was 3D and you had to worry about accidentally running off platforms. Okay, maybe you don't have to worry about that, but I did. All there is to do here is dodge bullets that Clockwork fires and then unload into the huge glowing weak points. The second phase adds these electric rings that we need to fly through to dodge. These are a solid addition to the boss fight that ask for just a little more skill with maneuvering the jetpack. I wouldn't say that this extra attack makes the second phase particularly good, but it does require a little more brain power than the first phase. The third phase is where this fight actually gets good. It starts with this weirdly abrupt transition where you just don't have the jetpack anymore and you fall down onto the pieces of Clockwork's death ray. Bentley then lets us know we need to hurry before getting his dialogue cut off because I went too fast. This platforming gauntlet is great. It has lots of obstacles that test our timing, but while we try to navigate the minefield of obstacles and debris, Clockwork is also sending attacks out at us, so we can't stay in one place for too long. The sound design and camera really elevate this final phase. The platforming section quite literally revolves around Clockwork, keeping him in the background the entire time. I love how Clockwork is just completely malfunctioning while in the lava too, flailing around helplessly as he just says random words. It really gives the feeling that he's a robot that is almost completely destroyed.
Blue 7. Flowers. Never.
Then there's the music. This track is great. It feels appropriately climactic and urgent for this final phase. Everything just comes together so perfectly here. If the entire boss fight was like this, it would have been amazing. Instead, we had to deal with the boring jetpack before this. The section ends with us jumping on Clockwork's back and then waiting a little bit to let his last line of dialogue play because it's really easy to kill him before he's done talking.
Cooper! You will never be rid of me. Clockwork is superior.
I don't know how this and Bentley's dialogue at the start both managed to slip past quality assurance. Did they expect kids to not mash the attack button here? Or maybe it was a time constraint thing, who knows?
It took some tricky maneuvering, but I managed to snatch that last piece of the Thievius Raccoonus from Clockwork's claw. I had taken down each member of the Fiendish Five: Raleigh, Mugshot, Ms. Ruby, the Panda King, and finally Clockwork. I'd beaten them all one by one and reclaimed my birthright.
This final cutscene does a great job capping off the game. Shallow though it may be, this cutscene serves as closure for Sly's character arc. He became a master thief, recovered the Thievius Raccoonus, and avenged his father's murder. Sly also mentions how he's grateful for Bentley and Murray for helping him on his journey. Don't know why he's including Murray though, all that guy did was make me do stupid minigames. But Sly is forgetting about somebody else.
Who could ever forget the lovely Carmelita? Looks like we're not going to be friends anymore. Now that Clockwork's death ray is out of commission, we're back to playing cops and robbers. I thought for sure she was going to slap the handcuffs on me right then and there. But instead, she was true to her word and gave me that 10-second head start. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I felt bad leaving her stranded on that giant rock, but I knew it wouldn't be long before we'd see each other again.
This is a really great ending to the game. I had complained about Carmelita's lack of presence in the game, but Cold Heart of Hate really comes in at the last minute to flesh out her and Sly's relationship to a point where I can reasonably believe there's some chemistry between them for this final cutscene. Overall, Cold Heart of Hate is a really solid finale to Sly 1, barring the opening turret level in the first two phases of Clockwork's boss fight, that is. Before getting into my final thoughts on the game as a whole, I want to briefly touch on the credits because there's surprisingly something worth talking about here. The only member of the Fiendish Five that's credited is Ms. Ruby, who's voiced by Priscilliana Esperolini. I think I said that right. The other four members, Raleigh, Mugshot, Panda King, and most bizarrely Clockwork, are nowhere to be found. The real crazy part is that they were all voiced by the same person, Kevin Blackton. That's some seriously impressive range. And after the credits roll, we get this nice teaser that sets up the possibility of a sequel. When it comes to Sly 1's story, I won't be too critical because clearly the focus was on gameplay and character dialogue first and foremost. The story feels like something that you would find in a comic book or a Saturday morning cartoon, which was clearly the intention by the developers. It serves little more than a reason for Sly to go from location to location and show off the wonderful artwork in the cutscenes. As a big fan of the sequels, which take their stories far more seriously, I have a few grievances with Sly 1's story, such as the multitude of contrivances for the minigame levels or how most of the Fiendish Five just tell you where to go after beating them. However, taking a step back, I'm able to see that the story was just not that big of a focus for Sly 1 as it ended up being for the sequels. Knocking points off of Sly 1 for having a weak story would be no different than knocking points off of literally any Mario game for having a weak story. Some games focus on their story, some games don't. While I may not like it personally, I can accept that Sly 1's focus is on style and gameplay, both of which it does extremely well. Speaking of the gameplay aspect, Sly 1 is undeniably solid overall, if a little too easy. I know the cover says E for everyone, but that doesn't mean everyone is going to enjoy how easy the game is. Although, I am saying that as a 22-year-old who's played the game multiple times. There are still a few challenges here and there, mainly from the annoying minigames, but no level in this game will see you dying more than 2 or 3 times unless you're the worst gamer ever. But who could be that bad at a children's game? I did focus on a lot of the bad when it came to the minigame levels, and rightfully so. A lot of these levels are really unfun due to their strict fail conditions. The twin-stick shooter levels are the exception here. This is pretty much the one alternative gameplay style Sly 1 managed to do well. And it seems that Sucker Punch knew this too, as this gameplay style would only become more prominent in the sequels. Back on topic though, Sly 1's gameplay is a bit of a mixed bag. When it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's really bad. but I would say that Sly 1 tends to be really good more often than it is really bad. With the general story and gameplay discussion out of the way, I want to take time to touch on all the characters in Sly 1. Any Sly fan will tell you that the characters are the heart of the series, even beyond the stealth platforming gameplay, and those fans would be correct if they were talking about the second or third games. My blanket criticism for all of the characters in Sly 1 is that they don't get enough time to shine, the exception of course being the main character. Sly Cooper is cool. His dialogue is witty and funny, and Kevin Miller's delivery just exudes an aura of cool confidence. My only gripe is that Sly tends to be a little more rude to Bentley and Murray in this game than he does in the sequels. Seriously, introducing one of your friends as part-time driver, full-time burden, while a humorous introduction to a character, is just something really mean for Sly to say. I think the distinction here is that Sly in the sequels is more sassy, while here he's just kinda snarky and rude.
This swamp is oozing with disgusting mold and bacteria.
Suck it up, Bentley. We got work to do.
But he is only a little bit rude. He does have plenty of humorous and nice interactions with both Bentley and Murray.
I'm 99% sure you'll be able to ride them all the way to the top of that statue before they explode.
What about that other 1%?
Well, in that case, Sly, you will be blown to bits. But the experience will no doubt be spectacular.
Nice.
Overall, Sly is a really fun and cool character, and the most important thing is that I like that this is the guy I'm playing as in this game. Next up is Murray, and hoo boy, where do I start with this guy? I find Murray to be particularly unlikable in Sly 1. He's characterized as a nearly useless oaf that's only good for driving the van. Again, direct quote from his childhood best friend Sly.
Part-time driver and full-time burden.
The game tries to give him some sort of arc in the final cutscene about him showing bravery over the course of the game, but I wouldn't call cowering in fear from enemies as your ally covers you in a turret bravery. He's most prevalent in the worst levels in the game, and outside of those levels you might even forget he exists because he's practically exclusive to those levels. Murray is so lucky that I know he becomes a better character in the sequels because he pretty much has no redeeming qualities in this game. As for Bentley, he's pretty much just the nerd, or the guy in the chair, a one-dimensional caricature who serves to give the player tutorials. Bentley probably gets the second most screen time in the game since he appears at the beginning of most levels to talk to Sly. This gives him a lot more opportunities than Murray had to be likable, and I would say that his conversations with Sly do a good job of both being entertaining and conveying important information to the player.
I'm gonna enjoy this.
Don't you get it, Sly? If you step on that rug, forget about becoming a master thief. You'll be a master dartboard.
Overall, he's a perfectly fine character, definitely much better than Murray, although that isn't a high bar to clear. Then there's the Fiendish Five, which are all great. They all have big personalities that make great impressions for their limited screen time. My only complaint with them is that I wish we got to see more of them. They all get their backstory in their world's opening cutscene, have a pretty generic PA system announcement in one of their levels, and one conversation before and after their boss fight. This problem with lack of presence is definitely most prevalent for Clockwork. This guy's been after Sly's family for literally thousands of years. He's the leader of the Fiendish Five. He should be a constant looming threat throughout the entire game, but we don't even get 10 minutes of screen time with him. This is definitely an issue that Sucker Punch was aware of too, as the sequels would give a lot more screen time to each world's villains. Lastly is Carmelita. She's pretty much a no-nonsense cop for the whole game up until the final few levels of Cold Heart of Hate. She's another character I wish got more screen time, as her chase levels are the most fun levels in the game, and you can easily forget about her existence due to the long stretches of time where she just disappears from the plot. A lot of her character development is backloaded into the final 3 levels of the game, which is not ideal, but at least she can be classified as an actual character with a defined arc. That arc being her going from hating Sly and considering him just a no-good thief, to realizing that he's morally good, and possibly developing feelings for him. Possibly, I say, but I wouldn't exactly call this ambiguous. As a whole, I don't think the characters in Sly 1 are bad, just underdeveloped. All of the characters in the game, except Murray, who barely has any dialogue, really shine through their charming and humorous interactions. The Sly series as a whole has incredibly strong character writing and is definitely one of the main reasons that fans like me love the series so much. There's just not that much of it in this game compared to the sequels, although I think it says a lot to Sly 1's credit that my main complaint is that I wanted to see more of the characters, minus Murray. I hate Murray in this game. Now I want to talk about vocal performances. Sly 1 has a great cast of actors and actresses behind their characters. Kevin Blackton gives a great performance as 4 of the 5 members of the Fiendish Five, and despite my gripes with how slowly she speaks, Priscilliana Esperolini also does a great job as Ms. Ruby. As for the main cast, Matt Olson, Chris Murphy, and Kevin Miller all nail their characters too. The only character I'm not super big on is Roxana Ortega's performance as Carmelita Fox. She often delivers her lines in a very flat manner compared to the more expressive and cartoony voices that the rest of the cast gives.
I don't get it, Cooper. I've hunted you for years, tried to throw you behind bars, but when you get a chance to leave me in a cage, you set me free. Why?
This does land more in the realm of being an issue with direction rather than acting, as it is ultimately up to the director to tell the actor or actress to speak with more emotion, but if this was really the best that Roxana Ortega could do, then maybe they should have just hired a different actress. And for better or worse, I guess Sucker Punch agreed with me on this, as Carmelita would go on to have a different voice actress in every single game in the series. Still, Roxana Ortega's final performance in Sly 1 is definitely a step up from the game's alpha build.
You think? This taser packs a paralyzing punch. You ought to try it. Might snap you out of your crime spree.
Yeesh. Next I want to discuss Sly 1's soundtrack, although I'm not much of a music guy, so I'll be keeping this section rather brief. Sly 1 has a really solid soundtrack, composed by Ashif Hakik, Boyd Post, and Ian Rodia. The minigame levels all get fast and frantic arcadey songs that work really well for them, while the platforming levels have a wider variety of styles to their songs, ranging from relaxed to tense to extremely urgent depending on the vibe of the level. Something that I didn't mention in my rants about the HD collection is that its version of Sly 1 has a recomposed soundtrack, including additional instrumentation for a lot of the tracks. Here, have a listen. I wouldn't say the recomposed soundtrack is particularly better or worse than the original soundtrack, but it would have been nice for the HD collection to allow you to switch between both depending on what you wanted to listen to. Now it's time for the bonus content. Sly 1 has a lot to dig into after finishing the main game. Immediately after the credits finish rolling, we're put back into the van, where Bentley shows us this cool video that's, well, it's completely in Japanese and I have no clue what it's saying, but it's pretty clearly the Japanese version of the opening cutscene from the end of the tutorial.
There is some good news, though. A friend of mine in Japan just sent me this really cool movie. And guess what? It's all about us!
It's pretty cool to see the differences between the American and Japanese version of the game's cutscenes. The American cutscenes all stay very still, and what little movement they do have is usually kept pretty basic. Meanwhile, the Japanese version is just fully animated. It's an interesting stylistic difference. I guess losing the comic book aesthetic wasn't really that big of a deal for the Japanese version, since comic books are more of an American thing anyway. Sly and Carmelita also have their designs noticeably changed in the Japanese version. Not much to say about this part, I just like the designs. As for the dialogue, I don't speak Japanese, but I doubt there are any major deviations from the American version of the cutscene. Then there are the clue bottles. Either before the end credits, or in my case after going back through the game to collect all the bottles I missed, we get a nice cutscene where Sly reflects on his journey and how he managed to become a great thief by earning the Thievius Raccoonus rather than simply inheriting it. I love Sly 1's cutscenes, so getting to see another one is absolutely worth going for all the clue bottles in my opinion. After this cutscene, the game just plays the credits again and then dumps us back into the van. Next there are the time trials. Completing any of the normal platforming levels unlocks what the game refers to as a Master Thief Sprint. These can really put your skills to the test. My best times on them ranged from finishing with having 7 seconds left to only having 0.4 seconds left. One might think that the fast mode power-up would be really useful for the time trials, but using it also speeds up the countdown, so it's completely useless. Instead, the roll power-up is best for getting through time trials quickly. Completing each level's Master Thief Sprint unlocks developer commentary for that level, unless you're playing on the Sly collection where the commentary tracks are completely absent and the Master Thief Sprints don't unlock anything. Have I mentioned this collection is literal garbage? It's really nice to get something for all your effort, unless you're playing on the Sly collection, but I wouldn't say you're missing out on anything by not going for 100%, as all of this content can be found on YouTube these days anyway. All in all, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is a very solid first entry in what would eventually become the Sly Cooper trilogy. Yes, the Sly Cooper trilogy. Am I going to do the YouTuber thing and say that the game is some sort of underrated masterpiece hidden gem of the PS2 era? No, because it's not. Sly 1 is definitely a fun and enjoyable game, but the minigame levels and lackluster story drag it down a bit for me. However, the colorful characters, fun dialogue, and strong core platforming gameplay hold up extremely well, even over 20 years later. Plus, the knowledge that the sequels expand on a lot of the game's foundation makes it much easier to stomach the game's shortcomings, at least in my opinion. If you're a fan of platformers, especially Crash Bandicoot, as Sly 1 was heavily inspired by that series, then I definitely recommend trying it out. It has its ups and downs, but what game doesn't? As a whole, playing the game and even going for 100% is very fun from start to finish. A used copy is relatively cheap to buy secondhand, and it's also available with a PlayStation Plus Premium subscription on PS4 or PS5. The price may be ludicrous, but if you don't own a PS2, then paying for a month subscription is the cheapest legal way to play the game. While the HD collection is definitely an option, it's not a very good one due to the missing content and plethora of technical issues that plague this version of the game. Now, eventually I'll get around to reviewing Sly 2, 3, and the other one, but I'm not sure when that'll be. In the meantime, if you want more Sly Cooper content, I already mentioned the video by Jason's Pendulum going over the differences between the Sly collection and the original releases, and there's also Snapcube's real-time fan dub of Sly 1, which I really enjoy. And that concludes my review of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus for the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. Thank you so much for watching. This is the first video game review I've ever done, so please let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Both praise and criticism are greatly appreciated, as I want my videos to be the best they possibly can be. So tune in next time for whatever it is I decide to talk about next. I have an embarrassingly large collection of video games, so I'm not short on potential video topics. I am short on ways to end a video, though. Hopefully my next video will improve on that.